Now recording. So, how's it going? How's your Monday so far?
Amazing.
Good. Amazing is good, as long as that's not sarcasm.
It was sarcasm.
Oh,
I
well.
apologize.
You should have said that in Sarcastica.
Yeah, I'm very sarcastic usually.
Yeah. So, I understand that there's a bit of a backlog building up in the assignments. I too have had midterms. And unfortunately, I'll try to get things to you as soon as possible. I've also been working on a new iteration of assignment 4 for server side. It's a dungeon crawler. I'm very excited. I'll show it to you guys at some point. Yeah, when it's done. Because I don't know if you guys remember assignment 4 from server side, but it kind of sucked.
It was the endless scrolling, right? For
Yeah.
quotes? Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, with quotes from people who probably shouldn't have their names see the light of day ever again in human history. A couple of them. So that's right. I'm talking about Gandhi. No. Kidding. So yeah, all right. Assignment 5. Git push pull. Oh, Kevin. 20-minute videos this time. Listen, guys, you're under no obligation to make the video the full 20 minutes. You can make them shorter if you want, so you don't have to fill the time. As long as you cover everything that's in the assignment description. So, task number 1. Remote repository with GitHub. Before starting this task, create a public repository on GitHub which has a license file, pick any license you like, but no README file. The repository can be named whatever you like. You should also create a fine-grained personal access token that will allow you to read-write to the repository. Take that sentence out and replace it with, you should do the GitHub CLI login authorization such as we discussed last time in class. Unless otherwise stated, use git shell commands to carry out your tasks. You must do this in terminal. Yeah. Number 1, show your repository and its contents on GitHub using a web browser. Number 2, open the bash shell. Number 3, navigate to a directory where you wish to clone the repository. Next, clone the repository. Next, create a new README file, including the following the following things. You get to decide what the actual content will be, but you must include these elements in the README file. This is basically do you know how to do stuff in Markdown? Add and commit the readme.md to the local repository, push those changes to GitHub, and show the changes to the repository on GitHub, including the rendered README file. So that's basically it. You're just making the README file, using some Markdown to do the various things. Sound good? Good. Question?
If we already have the personal access token thing, does that work, or do we have to use GitHub?
Oh no, yeah, if you've already got it, then don't worry about it. Yeah. Basically, all that means is do not shoot yourself in the foot. Make sure that Git can actually push something to GitHub before you start. Yeah. Please pay careful attention to what parts of these documents say, do this before you start recording. All right? I don't need to see anything that's not, in the task steps. Okay. Task 2, fork and pull request. Unless stated otherwise, use get shell commands to carry out the task. Using a web browser while logged into GitHub, fork this repository using your own GitHub account. This is probably just a way to bump up his statistics, isn't it? As part of this assignment, please like and subscribe this YouTube channel. No. Although that's effectively the way that it works on my YouTube channel. I've got like 1,650 subscribers, which is not bad for considering the quality of the content. But, you know, it's because it's all students who forget to unsubscribe at the end of the semester. So, thanks, guys. Using the web browser while logged into GitHub. Create a fine-grained, sure. Do that, yeah. Open the bash shell in Linux. Navigate to a directory where you wish to clone the repository, if necessary. Clone the forked repository. Modify the colorswitcher.html file so that one more additional random color is possible. And note, unless stated otherwise, use get shell commands to carry out the task. I'm going to say, when it says modify the HTML file, I'm going to say that's also done in terminal. Okay? Although, I'm okay if you use nano, but yeah. Add and commit the change to the local repository. Push the change to the GitHub repository, and using the web browser, create a pull request. The instructor should actually get the pull request. Kevin's going to get a lot of pull requests. Cool. So, submission instructions, yada yada yada, everything as usual. Yes. All right. Oh, and we are not using late days. We are doing the other thing. So, any questions? All right, yes.
It says that it's due last week.
Well, that's not true.
And number 6, I think
It does
that it was due yesterday.
It does say right
All right. There we go. Oh, like that. It's too much zoom. Get out of here. More options. I hate lock dates. Due date. Yes. Good. Assignments. Assignment 6. Edit. That one. Yes. No. That one. Clear. Save. Good. Yeah. Our topic today will be portfolio websites once we've cleaned up the rest of... this one's a lighter one. We should be able to get caught back up this week. So, it's not my fault. It's a Monday class. We lost the Monday in first week. You know, I was sick that one week, but don't worry. We'll get there. So, I think the major things that we haven't talked about yet are forks and pull requests. Yeah? It's another one of these 90-page things. Yeah, we did origin conflicts. We did push with conflicts. Yep, yep. Did we do this one? I don't think we did this one. All right. We'll start here. Skipping things as they are unnecessary. So, Git workflow. When you are working with other people on a project, in general, we should first pull and resolve conflicts with our own repository before we attempt to push anything anywhere. This minimizes the number of conflicts that you experience with the shared repository, and minimizing conflicts is a generally good thing to do. Conflicts are inevitable. It's your conflict resolution skills that are important. This is also life advice. Conflicts are inevitable. It's your conflict resolution skills that are important. So, what about git fetch then? It's like pull, except it does not try to merge automatically. It allows us to investigate changes first and then merge. So git fetch is something that you would wish to do if you know there's going to be a conflict. If you want to stop the thing before it attempts the merge, take a look around, familiarize with yourself with the changes that are going to happen, and then you press the button to attempt auto merging. That's what git fetch is for. Make sense? So, I suppose we'll need the VM running, won't we? Well, no, I'm not going to run the VM. We don't really need the VM for the week 6 stuff. So yeah. Instead, I will use the slides as they're intended to be used and point at the screenshots. So let's make changes on the remote repository. Note we have repository demo repo, adding another line on the remote repository, adding some content to the file. Notice this is a change to the file which has already existed, changing file.txt. We then commit the change. This is using the GitHub's inbuilt editor interface. It requires you to provide a commit message, although it's often quite intelligent about the auto-generated one. Then, when we run git fetch origin, you can see it goes through its regular fetch routine. This is the information that we're used to seeing by now when fetching from a remote source. The changes are not merged, so if we take a look at the contents of file.txt, we can see it's the second of those 2 lines and not the first. This was the line that was added. That change does not appear yet, despite the fact that we have fetched the changes. We fetched them, we haven't integrated them. We can also see that our main branch pointer is behind the main branch pointer. So you can see this is where we are, but this is what we just pulled from origin, right? So we need to catch it up. We could first view origin name with a checkout if we preferred, after which we could merge it, possibly resolving the conflicts. So, because the fetch that we just performed from origin pulls a new commit in, it is possible to check that commit out And then we have access to the file, we can view what the changes in the file are, right? We then merge it with git merge origin main. Git switch dash git merge origin main. We merge the files together. This is not, this is a fairly trivial example. We're just adding one more line. There's no actual like same line file conflict which occurs. So we don't get the super nasty, you know, left side, right side thing dumped into the file. Make sense? Good. Although, by this same mechanism, such a merge conflict could occur, right? If two changes were in conflict and on the same line, you would get the left side, right side dropped into your file that you would then have to fix. Make sense? So far, so good? Good. All right. Forking and pull requests. This is a topic that one must be very careful about one's enunciation when discussing. So, many puns ensue. So, the idea behind these is to enable collaboration, right? When you create a fork of a repository, you create a clone of someone else's repository on your own GitHub account. So you're like, I like that, mine, right? You know the Bugs Bunny communist meme, right? Our repo. That's what you're doing. We're going to create a fork. Again, I'm going to keep this in the slides. Of the HTML basics repository on Kevin's account. So, if we go to, poop. Every time, anybody remember what slide we were on?
67.
Oh, you guys are awesome. I've heard that that number is a meme now, but I don't know why. So, there you go. Even Simon Dalton was aware of that. He's pretty plugged in though, Simon. For an old guy, you know. So, let's see here. Top right. Yes. Right here. You can see he's forked it 5 times. So, there's the button. Fork and star. So you can see that like fork is somewhat being used as a popularity statistic. It's like GitHub has basically 3 popularity statistics. Star, which is like a like, right? Fork, which is like, oh, somebody actually used this code somewhere, which is like probably the most, like that's the strongest indicator, right? And then watch, which is just, you know, is this an interesting project kind of thing, you know? And you actually get like updates in your feed about things you're watching type thing. So, you click on fork, and it allows you to fork it. It allows you to create a copy of the repository on your own account. You give it your own name, you select how much of it to copy, give it a description, and there you go. You now have a fork. it's really not that difficult to understand, right? It's just the terminology. It's like a fork in the road, right? That's kind of like what the terminology is derived from. I talked about like LibreOffice versus OpenOffice last time, I think I recall. Question?
Yes. If you create a private, like if you want to create a private copy of somebody's repository, do they know about it? Like, as the owner of something that gets forked, do you get a notification? Do you know of like all of the projects that people are using your stuff in?
See, nobody's ever forked anything I've done, so I don't know if you get a notification. I assume you get a notification, at least, that somebody has, because it's like a fairly major thing if your repository is forked. But I'm not sure whether a repository, I imagine once it's yours you should be able to pull it private if you wish to. But if you take a look at this page here, it doesn't seem to give you the option of making it private. Yes?
You can make it private.
Yeah.
I believe it's actions.
Yeah. Or set it, yeah, like in the settings, but like on this page it's kind of like, you know, it's not immediately like, yeah, like once you've forked it, it's your repo. You can do what you like with it, right? But, you know, they're going to encourage a public repo to continue to create more public repos because like that's what raises the profile of the site and stuff like that, right? So yeah, you can take stuff private. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Very good. So, pull requests. So, a pull request is it's a different kind of thing than simply forking a repository. Creating a copy of something else somebody else has made is all well and good, but projects normally like go better when people collaborate, right? If all anybody ever did was create forks, then you would have like, you know, umpteen gazillion versions of this particular Minecraft mod, right? And nothing would be, you know, coordinated or centralized. You'd be talking to like, you know, 1,000 individual people who all put their own little spin on it, right? The better way to approach that is to work together with people. I know, people are awful, but occasionally people can be useful. So, a pull request is when we ask someone's permission to take their code, make some modifications, and then push it back into their repository. This is something we don't ordinarily have permission to do, right? You can't just go around to people's public repositories and push whatever kind of code you want into them. It requires their explicit consent, which makes a lot of sense, right? So, yes, we clone to our local machine, make modifications, and push them, as well as pull updates. This will not affect the copy of the repository, the source repository, the origin, from which this copy was forked. We can make changes locally, push them to the copy on our GitHub account, and then make a pull request. A pull request is a request for the owner of the original repository to pull in the changes in our repository. So, the owner receives the pull request, reviews the changes, and then can merge them into the repository if the owner finds the changes to be good, right? So, pull requests are common in open source software. An open source repository is made available for anyone for their own purposes and modifications. Bugs can be discovered by the community. New features might be developed. Contributing to an open source project is also like a really good thing to put on a resume, you know? And it doesn't have to be difficult either, you know? Like I've kind of had the itch a little bit. The problem is like I don't really get any like time to just do software work, you know, for my own benefit because, you know, I have small children and I don't really get that much time to myself. And usually it's like exhausted past 11 at night, and that's not optimal coding time. But like, I play a game sometimes, which is not Minecraft, but it's like the open source re-implementation. You know, it used to be called Minetest, but it's now called Luonti. And I'm like, you know, I got mods and stuff, and it's like, oh, it would be really useful if like the definition of an iron ingot in this mod, you know, linked up to that one when they were installed at the same time so that I didn't have two different types of iron ingots, right? That right there is a pull request, right? It doesn't have to be a big change. It's an improvement that you could think of, right? But it does kind of like, it to some degree requires you to be a user of the software. Like I've seen students before be like, you know, man, I really need to like contribute to an open source software project. So I never used this software before, but I'm going to take a look through their source code and see if I can think of any improvements. It's like, nah, it's not really how you find improvements or bugs, right? How do you find improvements and bugs? By using the software, right? So you have to, like, to some degree, to, you know, be in a position to make improvements to open source software, you have to kind of adopt open source software yourself, right? You're not going to find any bugs or improvements that need to be made to the open source, you know, hush-hush re-implementation of Minecraft if you're playing regular, old, Microsoft-owned Minecraft, right? It stands to reason. So, yeah, so if that's, you know, that's kind of my advice. To get in, you kind of have to be using the software as a user, and that will help guide you to what needs to be improved or maintained or bugs that exist, you know, going forward. Does that make sense? Yeah. Contributors can implement changes and make pull requests to integrate them into the original repository. Open source projects will keep a list of open issues that contributors can fix/build and make pull requests. So this is a software that I have been known to use occasionally. Aseprite, yeah, it's on GitHub. It's a really nice sprite editing software for making video games and other associated things. You can see it's got a few issues. because a lot of people use the software, right? The Issues tab in GitHub, it's your bug reporting feature, right? So let's take a look. Some of these are requests for additional features. Some of these are reporting bugs. You can see that these things are tagged according to, you know, is it a bug? Is it a feature? Right? Is there some particular thing that it applies to? Right? This is for Linux, right? This is a Linux bug. Linux bugs should be fixed by people who use Linux, right? Otherwise, you have no idea what you're doing. You know, problems in the user interface, problems in scripting, problems with compilation. But like this is real, right? There are definitely people who, you know, who work to develop Aseprite professionally because it's professional grade software. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you or I couldn't take one of these things and attempt to fix the bug, right? But again, it requires a fairly high degree of familiarity with the software. So if you don't actually use the software, I wouldn't recommend thinking that you can contribute to the project, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Good. How to contribute to open source, a website. I'll let you guys read that on your own time if you're interested. So, contributing to open source projects is a fantastic way to build your portfolio as a student. You get to practice coding solutions to real problems and someone reviews them, so you're not just coding in the dark. Someone who knows what they're talking about will critique your work, which is, you know, good feedback can sometimes be hard to find, right? You're often literally building credibility with the same people who could be hiring you one day, right? This is how the software ecosystem works in open source these days, right? Let's say you have a company, they have a product, it's open source, right? You are a user of this software, you get involved in development, you make several several of your pull requests are good, right? And eventually, the company decides they would be getting more good work out of you if they were paying you, right? It's like, you know, like there's a point like don't work for free too much, right? But you know, it's another video game based example, but some of you may be familiar with the video game Factorio. Hands up. Yeah, everybody who's heard? Yeah, I'm kind of playing to the crowd with this one, right? So recently they had the Space Age expansion for Factorio, and the story behind the development of Space Age is somewhat interesting. Basically, Factorio had a fairly healthy modding scene, like the base game, and one mod just blew the whole game apart in terms of being like overwhelmingly like the best mod, and this was the space exploration mod. Now, the guy who made that mod, the developers were like, we could do like an official version and sell this, you know? And so they said, hey, person who wrote the most popular mod for our software, would you like to help us develop that into like an official released version that's like got our artists working on it and stuff? And it's like, he was like, yes, these are acceptable terms. So, and that's sort of the origin point of the space age expansion for that game, is like one guy who made a really good mod got hired, right? And now I'm sure, you know, he'll be with them on whatever their future projects are as well. So yeah, it's like, get involved. Like you might just be talking to like your future employer, right? On the subject of career advice. So, to make a pull request, we go back to our forked repository and we run through the following steps. We clone it to our local machine. We make our changes, right? Now, that's got a great big fat asterisk hanging off the end of it, right? The changes you make will very often not be trivial, right? That is real development work right there. Make changes, add it and commit it, push it to the forked repository, make a pull request for the owner of the repository. So, we need to clone the forked repository at this URL. We clone it, clone. We make a difference in, we make some change to the file. Here you go. Make a change. We commit the change to our local repository. Made trivial modification. As before, we make a fine-grained personal access token, but this time with the forked repository selected. So in this case, you will need to actually make a personal access token. Git push origin and the access token together to push the change to the remote repository. So git push origin, there you go. So you are writing it to your own Git, your fork of the repository. That's the first thing. You have to put your changes up on your GitHub account. By the way, has anybody in the room actually done a pull request? Am I describing the situation?
I did it like 5 years ago, I kind of forget.
Ah, cool. It's probably changed slightly, but not much in that time. Yeah. Now, we see the changes present, and notice how the GitHub branch, or how GitHub tells us our branch is now one ahead of the original repository. Next, we click on contribute, and open a pull request, right? So, but notice that this is on our repository, in our account, right? It says forked from wherever it came from, in this case, Professor Kevin Brown, right? Clicking on creating a pull request gives us here this dialog, which allows us to compare the changes that we've made versus what exists in the original repository. You can see this was added, 2 additions, right there. Discuss and review changes in this comparison with others. Learn about pull requests. Create pull request. These branches can be automatically merged. It checks to make sure that the branches can be merged. That's useful. You then are permitted to send a message to the person that you are sending the code to, right? You might consider this your opportunity to make an argument for why your change should be included, or what the change even does, you know? You should give them some description, right? If somebody gets a pull request and it's just like code changes and there's no like, tell me what this is, right? This is like where your tech writing skills comes in, right? You guys remember tech writing, right? You know what would make that course useful? If you practice this, you know? You should do bug reports and you should do like explaining to people what the changes in code are so that they'll accept your pull requests. And, ba-boom, the pull request has been made. This pops into the inbox of the person who owns the repository. The person who owns the original repository will review your changes and either accept or deny your changes. Make sense? Good. Any questions? Seems pretty straightforward, right? Good. Now, Kevin's going to show us what a pull request looks like from the other side. The pull requests can be accepted. Now logged into Professor Kevin Brown, the pull request can be accepted. First, you need to click on pull requests. Pull requests right there. You get a list of all of the pull requests people have made. Then you click on it to open it. You can see this is the information that was provided. It gives you the code to review. You can view the commit. You can view the file changes. Review all the things. You can send information back to the person who made the pull request, as you might imagine, and you can merge pull requests that way. Does this make sense? So, we have now covered the most essential features of Git and GitHub. These are the features that you are most likely to encounter in your future careers and even here at school. With the exception of GitHub Actions, which are becoming increasingly important as time runs on. We will be covering them later in the course. It is not possible to cover everything that GitHub can do, so here's the Git documentation, the GitHub documentation, and Bitbucket has some excellent Learn Git documentation. There's also one other one. What's it called? It's called Oh My Git. It's a video game. It's a video game about how to do Git and Git pull everything. It's like, yeah, play this game and you will learn. It's called Oh My Git. There you go. As you can imagine, this is also an open source project that you can contribute to. Make sense? All good? Very good. That's it. So much for Git and GitHub. Any questions? Okay. All right. Portfolios. Dun dun dun. Okay. I am old, but I remember what it was like. I remember resumes and having to write them. It's like literally the worst thing ever. Isn't it? Come on. Like resumes suck. They suck to write. Nobody even wants to read them, right? Like, nobody likes resumes. Anybody who says they like resumes is either lying or a business major, and those might be the same thing. Burn on business majors. Ha! So, the point of the developer portfolio is to supplement the resume, right? It is all very well and good to have a piece of paper that tells people what you have done, but in the words of Linus Torvalds, talk is cheap, show me the code. Software developers typically host a portfolio somewhere online. Even if you're not necessarily a web developer, like if you're a good enough developer, you should be able to figure out enough web development to be able to put something up online about it, right? Personal websites, generally yes, but also GitHub pages. Now, GitHub pages is not the same thing as GitHub repos. GitHub pages is a specific thing built in where you can configure a GitHub repository to be a website. Like it'll host like your website on GitHub as a page. It'll render the HTML and all of that. But you know, you have to set a couple of configuration things. It's not too difficult. Portfolio of work includes code and example applications the developer has implemented. So you have coded things. The things you have coded prove you've coded things. This is what employers want to see. The things you have coded, particularly if those things are on the internet already. This is perhaps more important than a resume for a developer. It shows people what you can do. If you are sufficiently active on GitHub, right, job opportunities can actually just develop from that, right? The best kind of job to get is the kind where you didn't have to give anybody a resume to get it, right? So, I'd like to show you some example portfolios now. I checked this morning and this one seems to be broken, but we can take a look at the other ones. Take a look at this. Oh, no, stop. Oh, I lost the page again. At least I was only here. There we go. There you go. This person, called Scene, a designer, passionate about crafting experiences that are engaging, accessible, and user-centric. You can tell that they're a designer because they've used a gradient for the background, right? So, like, a thing I sometimes say in like intro, in like JavaScript, and people sometimes go like, when I say it, is like, if you want an appealing design, just use like curves, you know? Like people find curves appealing, you know? So note the lack of pointy corners, right, on this designer's portfolio website. And I think it looks pretty good, you know? But like, notice the lack of pointy corners goes all the way down to like the little buttons inside of like the view thing here, right? There are no pointy edges here anywhere. Like, not even the stars have pointy edges. But yeah. Click on stuff. There you go. Description of the project. Right? This kind of feels like the same sort of thing that you'd use to like sell the thing, you know? Is this supposed to work? I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. But, yeah, okay, I don't care. But, stuff I've worked on, arranged nicely, right? This is quite a few projects. You probably won't have this many. So it's better to, you know, focus on the ones you do have, if that makes sense. Or show them off a bit more nicely. So I'm very excited about this next one, all right? There you go.
I've seen this.
You've seen this one? So how many people have seen this one? Just you? Yeah. Alright, so scroll down on mouse or press keyboard down arrow. So, there you go. So I think all of this has been done in like CSS. But this is a thing that people seem to be doing lately, is like doing like graphs of their skills and like how good they think they are at things, you know? I guess that's like okay if you're being honest, but like, you know. Likes basketball. Skills. There you go. Scripting and programming. There you go. Nobody likes jQuery. Nobody likes jQuery. Gesundheit. You're welcome. Does not consider themselves to be an expert in anything. So, like, if you're gonna do this, like, don't just claim to be an expert in everything, because it's not true, you know? I know that I'm being slightly countercultural when I say this, but like, you should try not to lie on a resume, right? Here's an example, right? How many of you put Python on your resumes? Good. If all that you have in terms of Python is the intro programming course here, and you're putting Python on your resume, you're not really telling the truth. You're not really a Python developer, you know? Like, you need more Python than that, you know? To, like, here's the question. Would you be comfortable holding down a job, right, with the skills you have in Python, having only done intro programming? I wouldn't think so. You would need to have done some Python somewhere else, right? Now, I'm not saying anything about anybody in this room, right? It's, you know, a lot of people do Python in high school and like for fun and stuff, and, you know, I'm not saying any one of you is like lying on your resume because you put Python on there, but like, just consider how much skill you actually have in the thing. Understand that you're going to be compared to people in the industry who've been using the language or the, you know, the system for many years, right? Be honest about like who you are and what you do. This is also a good way to try to prevent, like, you know, that situation that you hope not to get into, where like you get into a job and you have literally no idea what's going on. You know? It's like, oh, does this thing have sound? No, it doesn't. Someone else has sound. Okay. Oh, that's your ringtone? Okay, alright. So, you know, if this has been done in CSS animation, as I suspect, like this is quite a significant degree of like skill being displayed just in the website, right? This took time, you know? Work experience 1, work experience 2, oh, Fox News. Work experience 3, right? If you take a look at like this person, it's like, here are all my projects. This person only has like 3, right? And still, quite an impressive looking website. You don't need a lot, it's quality, it's not always quantity, right? It's also quality. You can see this actually probably hasn't been updated in a while, but there you go. So, you know, that probably took a long time to put together. But, yeah. Oh no, I did it again. Oh. Alright. So, if you are advertising yourself as a front-end developer, something like this is appropriate, right? You want something that looks flashy, right? Because like those are the skills you're trying to demonstrate, right? If you're a back-end person, you know, these are perhaps not the skills that you're being evaluated on. So, it, you know, I don't know if it was somebody in this class, but someone showed me that like a thing that's kind of becoming popular is like a command line interface web resume. I'm gonna see if I can find one. That's just a screenshot. Why did I click a screenshot? There you go. Pleased to have you here, fellow Homo sapiens. Oh. So there you go. Right? Maybe this is more your style. Maybe this is more your flavor. Right? Website is my portfolio site, but with GUI, which is kind of funny. There you go. There he is. And you can see it's like one of the, it's of the more traditional type from there. But yeah, this is kind of, I wouldn't recommend just doing this, but it is kind of an interesting little exercise, you know? Maybe this is more the flavor of what you want to like get across as an expression of you. Maybe the expression of you is the, you know, untold, unbendable power of the bash prompt, right? But yeah, does this make sense? These are like a recent trend. So if you're a bandwagony kind of person, then here's a wagon for you to band on. So, okay, so we've seen some good examples. By the way, just curious, have you guys like decided whether you're specialized as front end or back end people? No? Yeah?
Kinda like the back end more,
Yeah, I like back end more too.
but
Um,
especially when for PHP and C Sharp,
Mhm.
C Sharp handles like query queries,
mm,
and PHP with its MVC.
yeah. Yeah, I kind of like, I kind of originate as a C programmer, so like back end kind of is definitely more my dish. Like, I kind of feel like I can make something not completely unappealing, but the thing about front end design is you kind of have to have a bit of an artistic sense. I don't completely lack an artistic sense, but it's not like what I prefer to do, if that makes sense. And you should try to get a job that's the thing you prefer to do, if possible. But, at the same time, you gotta put bread on the table, right?
I've heard that
Mhm.
embedded development is also pretty good,
Yeah, it's,
where you can just use a small block of code for a sensor.
it's kind of like, it's a different program from this one, if that, obviously. Like, you have to know a fair amount about, like, electronics, and you have to take physics courses and that sort of thing, but, like, there's plenty of good careers in that kind of stuff. Basically, like, as software people, the types of processors we use are general purpose processors. But if you want a function to be maximally efficient, you have to design a custom circuit for it at some point. I used to teach this kind of stuff at the university, actually, but yeah, people still like program in assembly code, right? Like, you can get jobs doing assembly code programming because memory and battery optimization, assembly code. Yes?
I was gonna say, if you're looking for like embedded stuff, there's the IoT development class with Wayne Visser that's really good in semester 6.
Yeah, have you taken it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, Wayne's a friend of mine. He's just like the nicest guy on the planet.
Apparently he knows my aunt.
Yeah?
He goes to church with her.
Oh man. Yeah, Wayne is like, he's very, very tall too.
Yeah.
So if you want to be taught electronics by a giant who's very, very nice, a friendly giant, if you will, then I would recommend, the IoT, definitely. It's like, I'm not sure that like IoT per se is like a trend that still has the strength that it did 5 or 10 years ago, right? Like, there was this kind of IoT craze, It was like, it's, hardly anybody talks about it now because like, it was one of those business bubble cycles, Yes.
My friend recently bought a TV, and I was actually shocked to see that they had an entire section that said IoT. And I looked at it and said, it's been a while since I saw something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting because like a few things have gone this, a few things have gone this route, but mostly it's been novelty. But that's kind of like the way that business cycles work in in the 21st century. It's like someone in California has some idea, right? And then everybody's like, that's the next business thing. And then all of the business people dump money into it like there's no tomorrow. And a few companies, make products that improve the world. But mostly it's schlock. And the stuff that survives, becomes its own thing. But, there's a lot of weeding to do. Yeah.
I just want to, it's the IoT class. I don't know if this is what you were saying, but it's not really IoT, it's more like microcontroller programming. It's all like C code.
Yeah, that's kind of, that is the recommendation I was going to work towards, is like, just because it's called IoT, don't think that it's like on that trend. it's really a course in like microcontrollers and electronics and, you know, like you have to know that stuff to do IoT. So you guys want to know what like the whole idea behind IoT is? Like what's the nugget? It's a put a Wi-Fi transponder in everything, right? That's the idea, that's it, right? Wi-Fi enabled toothbrush, right? Who needs a Wi-Fi enabled toothbrush? Nobody bothered to ask, right? That being said, there was one IoT thing that like I got my father-in-law and he really, really likes it. It's like a meat thermometer, but like because it's Wi-Fi enabled, there's no like cord to like run outside the oven, and you just stick it in the meat and it, you know, it does somewhat intelligent prediction about when your meat's going to be done, and then creepily it like emails you the next day and asks you how your pork chops were, you know, because you know that's the other thing about all this IoT stuff is like, you know, it's data collection. It's absolutely data collection. But you know, there are definitely some applications of IoT that have been like measurable improvements. You know that diabetes thing that people get now?
My mom has those.
Yeah, like that is a significant improvement over the thing they used to do, which was to like stick a pin into their finger to draw blood, and that like several times a day, and you like use the testing strips, right? Man, you go back like 15, 20 years, the diabetes testing strip industry was enormous, and this thing has basically made it irrelevant, right? People seem to like the smart thermostat. I don't get those. I'm not sure why you would want those. I certainly don't get like smart lights, you know? You know, like some stuff is good, other stuff is awful. Yeah?
We've got one smart light in our house and it's the biggest pain ever because sometimes it desyncs all on its own, and what it does about it is it just starts flashing and you can't, the only way to fix it is to log back into your account and to go back in and to set it on the mode you want it on. And I had a point in time where it would not let me log in or access my previous account, so for a period of time there was just a room in our house we could not use because you couldn't turn on the light without it giving you a seizure.
See, this is exactly the type of issue I would have imagined would arise with a smart light. But yeah, so IoT was a thing. Blockchain was a thing for a while. People thought blockchain would be the next business thing, but it turns out that people generally don't understand very well how blockchain even works, so it's difficult to come up with a business idea. Whereas like IoT, it's kind of easy to come up with a business idea with it. You just take any product, now it has Wi-Fi, right? You know, and I think we all know what the current one is.
VR is another one.
Yeah?
VR.
Which one?
VR.
Oh yeah, VR, AR. Yeah, that was, yeah, when I first started here as a part-timer, that was like, I was like, okay, you want to talk about resumes? This is kind of a tough, this is talking about resumes. All right, I'll tell you how I got hired here as a part-time instructor. Because this was like my first, like, this was, working at Mohawk as a part-time instructor was the first time I'd like, you know, landed a job that was like related to my education and wasn't like a furniture store type thing, you know? And, you know, I had been like doing a master's degree and PhD at McMaster, but that's like very strongly not work experience. But they do make you do like teaching assistant jobs, right? You're kind of like cheap labor to keep the class, you know, keep classes going at the university. That's part of your purpose as a grad student. So I had like a few years of experience as a TA, right? And basically like I put at the bottom of my resume as an interest you know, it didn't like get me the interview, but once I was into the interview, it was like hobby video game development, and the person who was interviewing me to, you know, for the position, thought it would be like a great idea for there to be like something about video games going on, and that was the birth of the Video Game Development Club. Is like this one associate dean, like a decade ago almost now, decided, oh, there's this guy who knows how to do video games, and we could use a club because we don't have enough clubs, and that was how I got hired. And you know, so really, it was really, and the only reason it wasn't that I just put video game development on my resume. Like, I had brought with me like a nearly complete pinball game, the one that I have up on Steam at the moment. And so I had something to actually show, right? I was like, she said, you know, oh, video game development. I'm like, yeah, you want to see it? And it's just give me a moment. Let me get my laptop. Turn it around. Here, play my video game. And that was, and you know, kind of the rest is history. It was sufficiently impressive that, you know, it's like, oh, and she asked, like, okay, but would it be, you know, could you teach a student how to do this? I'm like, oh yeah, all the components are modular, and you just have to write a small script and attach it to a component, and then it, you know, it automatically, the game engine takes care of the rest of it. And you know, this was like around like definitely the tail end, but like there was like the next generation of game engines had come out, you know, and there was like a lot of flurry, and people like, now it's almost impossible to become an indie dev, but like at the time it was like kind of this, you know, blossoming, flourishing thing. And then, you know, Adpocalypse happened on YouTube. People stopped making money on that kind of video content, and then everything collapsed like a flan in the cupboard. But yeah, that's how I got the job that led to the job I currently have, talking to you about how I got a job. Is I made a pinball game because I liked pinball, and for no other reason. That's it. So make a project. Yes.
What's the game called?
It's called Super Steampunk Pinball 2D. And it's on Steam, and if you buy it, I am not going to grade your assignments any more fairly than if you hadn't. Yes.
You still run that club?
You lost it.
I do still run that club.
Has Christian Latour ever visited?
He's occasionally in there.
Okay, yeah.
He hasn't been by lately, but yeah, he's a traditionally in and around the club. Yeah.
Because I worked for him for a bit, and you mentioned he's been there a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you worked for Battle Goat?
Just a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Just for co-op stuff.
Yeah, they back like pre-pandemic, they were like recruiting co-op students out of the game dev club.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, it's not bad for what it is. Also consider I made it like 10 years ago. I consider the other one I have up to be like a lot more polished product, but it did a lot worse.
Oh, Hexi-Hashi? Is that the one you're talking about?
Hexi-Hashi, yeah. I guess it's like, I don't know, I think it like, it's just kind of like, I guess a bit more generic. But, oh, no, I know what the problem was with it. It's a phone game, and I released it on Steam.
Yes.
So, that's why it didn't do well.
Ah, alright.
Yeah. So, alright.
Steam reviews.
Steam review, don't even get me started on
Yeah,
Steam.
I read the first review, I said, yeah, no.
So I'm actually I'm surprised that the pinball game has as good a review as it is. It's got like one like interesting, like it has one constituency, which is like like people's dads, it's a dad game. Like pinball, like 2D pinball thing is reminiscent of the types of pinball games from the 90s. That's people's fathers and grandfathers, you know? Anyway. So, what do you put on a portfolio inside your portfolio website? Number one, it's up to you. Like, there are some key points that you should hit, but a portfolio website is, like, it's generally quite, you know, loose, free, what you do with it, you know. As long as you're hitting the main points, you have a lot of freedom in how you accomplish it. You should gear your website to the types of jobs and opportunities you are interested in. If you are interested in client-side programming, make it look nice. If you're interested in server-side programming, do something interesting on the server side if you can, right? Depending on like how it's hosted, you know, you can't exactly run PHP scripts on, you know, a GitHub page, but you know, it might be worth like properly hosting it as well, right? We can see that there are some commonalities though, even though the you know, the way that you do things is generally quite widely dispersed, pardon me. So, most of them have a summarizing statement. Who are you and what are you looking for? It may be a small about me paragraph, but just understand if it's too long, people won't read it, right? If we take a look here, let's see how long who am I is. Look at that. Pretty short. There you go. Summarizing statement. One sentence. This one, a bit longer. But this is also like the expanded version of the CLI one, right? So the key to good writing: clarity, brevity, and wit. All right? You will not be heard for your many words. Keep it short. All right? Do not waste the reader's time. You know, unlike I waste your time in this class. Exactly how specific or general you make the statement can reflect your experience and interests. So, the question is, are you a front-end web designer or are you a React designer? Right? One indicates that you might be a kid just coming out of school who's not really specialized in any particular you know, framework or something like that. Whereas if you say, I am a React developer, you are expected to know React, right? So don't say you're a React developer unless you are actually a React developer, which comes back into the whole don't lie on your resume thing. So, here's an example. A front-end engineer, I help startups launch and grow their products. So, this is what I do, or this is what I am, this is what I do. Questions?
So you said you should more so try to like specialize into a certain language or framework, right?
Well, that's kind of another interesting question, right? You either can walk the path of the generalist or the specialist, right? If you walk the path of the generalist, you are less likely to be hired for jobs that a specialist specializes in, but you're also more able to sort of duck and bob and weave as things change, right? If you consider, you know, oh man, what was a framework they were? Oh, I'll just say PHP. That's easy enough. Imagine yourself in the position of a PHP developer, like vanilla PHP developer, right? How much market demand is there for vanilla PHP development these days? Precious little. So, if you're like, I am a PHP specialist, that is what I do. If the market moves on, you must completely respec, right? Whereas if you are more of a generalist and you do lots of different things, you don't have to replace everything you do every 10 years, 5 years. You replace a piece of everything you do every year or two, right? Which is, you know, it's probably more work to stay on top of things as a generalist. It's definitely more work to stay on top of things as a generalist. But like, the other thing is, the people who are into a new technology first will generally be the generalists, not the specialists. If a brand new framework is developed, then there hasn't been enough time for anybody to consider themselves a specialist in it, right? So one strategy might be, you know, stay on the absolute cutting edge of whatever it is, and, you know, maybe if you find one that's sufficiently, you know, lucrative, you can like settle down in that for a few years as a specialist before it becomes irrelevant, right? Does that make sense? So those would be my comments on generalism versus specialism. Generally, you probably want to be a specialist, but you know, the question of selecting what to be a specialist in is non-trivial. And to answer that question, you kind of need to be a generalist.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have
Follow up?
A bit of a follow-up. Does it make more sense to go, if you want to specialize, does it make more sense to specialize in something that there's lots of jobs for, or something that you actually like?
Ooh, see, that's it depends on how willing you are to travel. So, this comes down to like also my personal philosophy of life, so take this with a grain of salt. I think that more is made in our society out of you should be in love with what you do for work than is necessarily true or healthy, right? Like, to some degree, like, being romantically in love with the, and I know that, I know I'm making a straw man, but, you know, for comedic purposes, like, being absolutely in love with, like, a programming language can also get you into trouble, right? Because it kind of blinds you to, you know, as as love in the romantic sense also blinds you. Love in the career sense also blinds you to other possibilities that may be. Like, for example, when I was in grad school, I decided I liked the programming language Haskell, right? And so I picked projects because they used that language rather than this would be a good project. And I ended up having a horrible time in grad school. Probably not completely, but certainly that contributed, right? So, like, it's great to like things. And if you get to work with something you like, even better. But, like, understand that in a gig economy, you are a mercenary, right? Like, you must do what the market demands, and if the market doesn't demand the thing you like, then you adapt or you starve, you know? and like, it's also fine to work a job, you know, like, you don't necessarily have to like the thing you do a good job of it, you know? Like, I know plenty of people that I drag kicking and screaming through that PHP course that write perfectly serviceable PHP code, right? They hate every line of it, but they still do a good job of it, right? So, you know, you don't have to love it, you have to be good at it. That's what I would say. If you can manage to do something you love, that's good. That's a bonus. But don't jeopardize the bread on your table, right? That would be everything I have in the way of wisdom for you on that one. Any other questions? Yeah. But you know, when you talk to me, understanding that you are talking to someone with a melancholic personality, you know, I don't think it's an understatement that people are in general pretty stupid. You know, I think that's generally true about most people at most times, and I include myself when I say that. You know, Lord knows it applies to me. So, you know. All right. So, education section. Developers that have done formal education, such as a diploma, will often list the program that they participated in. Education will, of course, feature in your application material proportional to how long it's been since you did it, right? If you're just out of school, education's right there at the top, right? But if you've been working in the industry for 5 years, it's probably much less important than you would think, right? So, some people even list courses taken and sometimes even the grades they got in courses. This probably comes off as being a bit, you know, a bit of a tightwad. Education isn't a particular focus of software development developer portfolios. It's not really the point of the portfolio. The portfolio is not really your resume as a website, right? The purpose of it is to show your software projects. If you did good and interesting software projects as part of your education, you show those. And you might say, you know, attached to a project, you know, this was my capstone for my degree or my diploma at XYZ, right? But, you know, that the education information is secondary to the project. The project is the primary thing. That nicely animated one with the superhero guy, it's very nice in terms of displaying skills, but I would have some quibbles about the information that's presented and the order in which it's presented. Number one rule of resume writing and portfolio writing. Understand that you have 3 to 5 seconds to get their attention, right? Only present the important information as quickly as humanly possible, right? Important information, get in their eyeballs, right? You have a very limited time to make an impression. Also, understand where the human eye falls on a piece of paper first, right? We are not computers. We do not start at the top and scan down, right? When we look at a piece of paper, we normally look in this region first. This is where your most important information should be, right? This is why when I write a resume, I generally, and this is why it's generally standard practice for resumes. Like your name and contact information go up here, right? They don't need, like your contact information is only interesting or useful if they've decided they like what's in your resume. It's not the first thing they look at, even though it's at the top of the page, right? So whatever occupies this region, that better be the thing that gets you the job, right? It's not skills and interests. Or it's not interests. Skills, maybe, but it's projects. Projects and experience. Projects and experience are what get you the job. Okay? So, good. Also, do you guys know the difference between a resume and a CV? Curriculum vitae. Alright? So, some places you apply may ask for a CV. This is a list of everything you've done. It's like the resume, but it's everything you've ever done, right? And it's allowed to be as many pages as that takes. The resume, 1 or 2 pages, right? All the important information on page 1. If you've been working, like I know it's like when you're a student, it's like, well, I've only like worked at Pizza Hut, you know, but like whatever you got, you put on there when you're a student. But as you accumulate experience and projects, it's not all gonna fit. So what do? You take the old stuff and you leave it on a CV, right? It's kind of, the CV is kind of like the archive for the resume. Like, if you want to be intelligent about creating your resume, this is what you do, all right? You write a CV, and then, depending on the job you're applying to, you edit out what's irrelevant, and you edit that down to the level of a resume. Does that make sense? Because the tailored resume is far more powerful than the general resume, right? How do you tailor a resume? The sort of meat-brained approach is to write a new resume for every job you apply to, right? The high IQ way of doing it: write everything you have on a piece of paper, select out the things that are important to that job, and then give them that. And you still have everything else if they want to see it. But there you go. Does that make sense? Good. So, notice here an about me paragraph, which I would say is actually quite a bit too long. Interests probably should not appear like up here. And like, I know it's like kind of strange to say, but like interests should kind of be like tailored a bit as well, you know? Like, don't think of the interests section as like, and this is the part of the resume where I get to be me. That's the wrong way to think about it. You're also trying to, you know, present the image of a person, of a good employee, even with your interests, right? So like, you know, it might be important to this guy that he likes cars, football, or science fiction, but unless he's like applying to be a developer at Rocket League, right, there's no real like intersection of that with the work, right? Ah, impressed I could come up with that though, right? But note the size of the education area. He probably should apply to work at Rocket League, actually, right?
Cars, football, and science fiction.
I mean, that's all that is. There you go, right? Skills section. So, questions. What languages do you know? What libraries and frameworks do you know? What tools do you know? Right? Tools. Certainly, I would say after having done this course, both Git and GitHub should be on, like, I am confident to say you can put those on your resume. I give you permission. Git and GitHub, there you go. Docker is an impressive one for this section at the moment. You may want to list database technologies and languages as a separate list. Like, if you put SQL in your list of programming languages, but you're like, you have to understand who you're reading. Who's reading that, right? A technical professional. How do people become technical professionals? By being pedantic, nitpicky people, right? So if you're putting something in your list of programming languages, you know, that's not really a programming language, you know, like it isn't, right? Don't give them any reason to not to kind of take pot shots and nitpicks at the way that you've organized the things here, right? And if you can't decide, just don't do categories, you know. You probably should do categories though. Sometimes people will list years of experience or some grading of their skill level with each. That's probably a good idea. Like I am a React developer with 4 years of experience. Because like when you read the top line of a job posting, it's like, we want a React developer with 25 years of experience, right? That's a joke because that's longer than React has existed. That's a thing you can find sometimes.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, like that's a thing that exists in the wild, right? And it's because the people who write the job description aren't the technical professionals, right? Because the person who wrote the job description is AI, right?
The emojis.
Oh, you know what the other good tell is? M dashes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like when was the last time you inserted an M dash into written text? You guys, yeah? You
I
use them?
ironically use that.
I feel like we've actually had this conversation before.
Not with me, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly someone else. But yeah, you guys know what an M dash is, the rest of you? Yeah? It's this guy, right? It's not a hyphen, right? It's longer than a hyphen, right? So there's no button for it on the keyboard. Generally, people don't use it. I think in Word, if you use 2 hyphens, it substitutes for it. But like most of the time, you know, yeah. Well, I'm actually even talking to the AI about the thing AI does. But yeah, M dashes, N dashes, and hyphens. The AI loves these things, uses it instead of hyphen most of the time. A person would use a hyphen. So that's one tell that you can use.
I've had to self-censor because of this.
I don't know. My approach to AI over the last year has kind of, like in terms of like student submissions, has kind of started to become like how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb, you know? And just, you know, nail people on tests. Easy. If you don't know it on a test, you don't know it. Which incidentally seems to be the way that education in general is going, actually. Like if you hear about what's like going on in the States right now, like they're bringing back like nasty tests. Like I think it's called like a yellow book test or something, or a blue book test. There's some kind of color dash book test that they're bringing back in the States because nobody can be relied on to not use AI to think for them these days. Anyway, skills. How do you demonstrate soft skills? Well, extracurricular work, part-time jobs, volunteer work. Any of you volunteer? Cool. I won't ask people what they volunteer. It's, personal information. But hobbies sometimes, right? Do you play an instrument? Right? Music? Do you jog for recreation? Basically, and this is kind of what I was talking about with like personal interests, like being good at, the saxophone, to pick a random musical instrument, to be good at the dulcimer, or the French horn. To be good at a musical instrument, you have to work really hard at it over a number of years. So those are the types of qualities that you are being assessed for when you are being assessed if you're going to be a good employee. Basically, you're being assessed for trait conscientiousness. So jogging is kind of a similar thing. Exercise programs, like if you can hold yourself to an exercise program, you can probably come to work on time, right? That type of thing. So I'm interested to know what you guys think soft skills are. Anybody?
We have to sit next to them every day, right? So are you going to drive them up the wall even if you're the best programmer in the world, or?
Yeah, you don't want to be Linus Torvalds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talking in front of a large group of your colleagues.
Yes. Surprising, not to talk about myself personally yet again this lecture, but how did I end up where I am? Because basically I guess I inherited a certain amount of public speaking ability from my father, who was a minister. So I'm not afraid of talking in front of crowds, and basically in the land of the nerd and the introvert, the person who is even mildly capable of public speaking reigns supreme. That's actually a real skill. Most people are crippled by nervousness. But you guys want to know the trick to public speaking? Absolute contempt of your audience. No, I'm kidding. Although it does help. If you just do not care what they think of you, then you don't have to be nervous, because it doesn't matter what they think. Yes.
This is a bit of a more just personal curiousness.
Mm-hmm.
The really weird questions that you are asked on interviews, like how many basketballs can you stuff into inside of a plane? What do you know the purpose of those? Because I had a really bad interview, and that just lives rent free in my head.
So there can be I think I can only offer you speculation. I've never really been in I've done a couple of interviews of people for various things, but this type of question is not in any of them that I've done. But seeing how you react to non sequitur might be useful for them,
I see.
right? So it's if I ask you complete nonsense, what's your reaction? Do you seriously attempt to study the problem? Do you get frustrated and give up? Right? That's the kind of thing that's probably getting at, right? There's also probably an element of seeing how well you can think on your feet, right? One problem that you often have with interviews when you're trying to interview people is that people will absolutely prep common interview questions, and you're encouraged to do so, in fact. Anybody who goes into an interview and hasn't thought about the answer to the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years, hasn't prepared for the interview, right? but at the same time, like if they study well enough for that, like you're not really having a conversation, you're basically talking to a script, right? So like if you're, like, the best thing for both parties is for the interview to be a conversation, right? So that, it might even just be an attempt at a conversation starter, you know? Like, see what they do with it, where they go with it. Throw them a you know, a left curve, or what's the phrase for that? A curveball.
Yeah.
Throw them a curveball and see how they deal with it.
So you've never had that like experience in an interview before?
I mean, I've had some pretty rough interviews. I think at one point I was asked if I was a fruit, what kind of fruit would I be? I forget what I said. Probably something pedantic. Like, it also, like, was this like a long interview? Like, did they have you there for half a day type
Yeah,
thing?
they're also like serious. Like they're like, I really need to know this answer, and they wouldn't tell me any details on it.
And it was, how many basketballs can you fit inside of an airplane?
Yes.
And if you said something like, well, how big's the airplane? How big's the basketball?
Yeah, they just said that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's definitely in the realm of like a psychological test.
I see.
Yeah. I think I'm not revealing anything to say to you that they didn't really need to know how many basketballs you can fit in an airplane.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. You had a comment.
Yeah, I actually had a friend that worked at HR, and I asked him that same questions, like what's with the nonsense questions, and usually it depends on the company, like they actually have like a weird psychological strategy depending on like who the person's role is supposed to fill. So, and it's also supposed to be a part of it of like work culture. Like some work cultures would prefer that you would answer that very scientifically, like how big is the plane, what is the volume of the ball, etc. What's the brand? That's what they want to hear. But some places they don't want to hear that at all. They want to see if you're good at banter, because that's kind of what the company's already comfortable with, because they already have like an established kind of social aspect to their company.
Interesting.
So sometimes that's the angle they're going for. Usually, the reason they ask you the nonsense questions because, like Nick said, like you can't prepare whether this is supposed to be like an analytical question or if you're just a good fit for like the group that you might be joining. Like, do you take yourself really seriously, or are you someone who can loosen up, or did they make a joke? Like, they're thinking a lot in the back of their head, so it can be kind of intimidating.
See, have you been asked any interview questions like that?
Me? Not myself, but like, I think they usually have like they say they don't have a script, but there's a playbook for it, apparently. That HR is like pretty knowing and very careful of not letting anyone else know about it. But there are certain responses that they're expecting based on scientific personalities of the individual.
Alright.
It's very pop quizzy, if that makes sense. Like, oh, this person is analytical. This person is combative. etc.
I might even say like pop psychology
Yeah.
ish, rather than, yeah.
I see. Thank you for answering my nonsensical question.
No, of course. I mean, does anybody else have any nonsensical questions? Yes.
I never got interviewed in that kind of stuff, but I've been watching several YouTube videos about resume and interviews, and one of them did relate to using a lot of big old notation questions in interviews. So is that actually true?
It depends on where you're applying, I would say, and who you're applying to. So, knowledge of data structures and algorithms as a topic is used as a gatekeeping mechanism, kind of regardless as to whether the particular position requires, like no job you ever work will require you to re-implement like a tree sort, right? You're not going to have to implement quicksort, right? But, right? It's kind of just like a tradition. It's almost just traditional, but it's also like, you know, it's a test to see, have you ever studied this material formally? You know, you say that you've been educated at an X and Y university, but did they teach you, linked lists, right? So, yeah, it's, the code interview is a thing, and it does lean quite heavily on the data structures and algorithm stuff. The degree to which it does that really depends on where you end up. But I've oh man, I'm having to dig back in my memory for this one. But I was once interviewed for a position and I had to write a C function, right? And I don't think they liked it because it wasn't sufficiently well optimized for them, type thing. Yeah, it's like they're testing to you to see if you can write code, right? For a lot of people, even I, suffer from this, I wouldn't really consider you to be a developer worth the name if you weren't able to comfortably work with two-dimensional data structures, for example, right? Is that wrong? Does it have to do with the stuff that you do for the job? If you're a front-end developer, probably not, right? But it's a stand-in for the domain of knowledge, right? And it's well-established tradition within this discipline. So, yeah, if you want leak code problems are, you've probably heard about leak code problems, right? Leak code?
Recently, actually.
All right. I believe it's the #1 interview prep thing for software people. Leak code. Oh, come on. No. Leak code problems. Problem list. Yeah, here you go. These are problems people do to prep for interviews. Here's some useful information for you. Yes?
But what kinds of jobs are these interviews for? Because I don't think a front-end developer is doing lots of big questions. Is it
Yeah, it kind of depends. It depends on front end maybe not quite so much. Back end I'd say probably more probable. But holy hell, if you think you're going to get a Java job, yeah. Oh, here you go. Search a 2D matrix. SuperPow. Sort an array. There you go. Right? And you can just, code. You can choose the language to an extent, But yeah, these are what people practice on for these types of interview questions. One that's kind of you can. Have you guys ever heard of FizzBuzz?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit.
FizzBuzz is a very, very easy algorithm.
Is that the 3-variable problem?
So this is the formal definition according to Wikipedia. It's a word game for children to teach them about division. Basically, every time you hit a number that's divisible by 3, you say fizz. 5, you say buzz. And if you hit 15, you say FizzBuzz. Right? Write a program that does that. Right? It's like a loop and a couple of if statements, but surprised the number of people who make it to 4th and 5th semester who do not have the capability to do FizzBuzz, right? People cheat their asses through their degrees and their diplomas, I am including universities in this, without even the ability to produce the FizzBuzz algorithm. And so if you're asked FizzBuzz in an interview, say, okay, that's an easy one. All right? Yes?
Does that exist in the algorithms repo on GitHub?
Does it exist in the algorithms? What, sorry?
There's a repo on GitHub called the algorithms.
The algorithms. Ooh.
It shows all the data structures on GitHub. Well, all the algorithms.
This one?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Guess it would be MISC. Oh, is this what people are cheating with? I guess that, come on, there's gotta be, is Fizz in here? Fizzy number test. Doesn't seem so. I mean, like FizzBuzz is so trivial, like it's not really like an algorithm, right? But like, you know, yeah. It's 5:30. Should we break and then resume? I hope that everybody feels that this has been an interesting conversation, even though we have been kind of departing a little bit from the material. Okay, we will resume at 5:43. Well, let's just say 5:45. I'll give you the extra 2 minutes. 5:45, please. All right, so, skills, yes. Kind of talked about this already. If you jog, you should say you jog. Anybody jog? Yeah? Good.
Yeah.
You should say you jog.
Is there a reason?
It shows like you're willing to do something boring for your own benefit for, you know, repeatedly over a course of many years, you know. The point is to demonstrate that you can do more than code, and you can interact with people, and are engaged in activities and interests which require non-technical skills. So you're generally like trying to demonstrate yourself as being a well-rounded person. Now, I think that the term well-rounded. Now, let me just lay this one on you, okay? For people like us, programmers, to be well-rounded, we have to know how to like play piano or something, right? How about musicians? Do they have to know how to program C to be well-rounded?
Depends. Like if you're trying to become a DJ, it can be useful to know
That's-
how it works.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
I do think that you're onto something. It's the well-rounded thing is definitely like extroverted leaning. It's like, are you
Oh,
like
yeah.
us?
Oh man, yeah, no, like half of an interview is trying to convince extroverts that you're an extrovert too, you know?
Although sometimes they do want to see that you're kind of nerdy.
Yeah,
And could potentially, you know, have maybe something divergent. That helps too sometimes.
yeah, but
Yeah.
like, oh man, like anti-introvert bigotry, that is a real thing. That is absolutely a real thing. I'm sorry, introverts. I assume most of you are introverts because you do programming for a living. You know, it attracts introverts like flies to honey. But yeah, like if you have someone who's sufficiently strong in extroversion, they actually believe that like if you're not an extrovert, you're not intelligent. That's a thing that exists with strong extroverts, right? It's a little bit like my thing. Well, if you don't know how to handle a two-dimensional array, are you even really a programmer? but it's like, well, if you can't like hold a conversation, are you really even a person? You know? And that's like, that's extroverts for you. And a lot of like the people, unfortunately, that you'll talk to are extroverts. And you know, personally, I just do a good impression of one. You may have gotten this, but I'm not actually an extrovert. I'm an introvert who's been trained.
You get very good at it over time.
You do. You do actually, you know? It's like, and like there is a certain amount of truth in it. Like you should try to break people out of their shell a little bit, but like there's a reason you like your shell. It's because it's cozy, you know? But yeah, so yeah, basically in order to demonstrate you're a well-rounded person, you need to like do art and like prove you're an extrovert somehow, even if you're not. So yeah, so we talked a little bit about soft skills. I'd like to also like throw a couple of other like soft skills on your plate as like the sorts of things people are looking for. Things that I might even consider borderline technical skills. Being able to write and communicate clearly is considered a soft skill, even though mastery of the English language is, in some sense, a very technical skill. You got a comment?
Wouldn't like that seems a little very like weird that it's expected that knowing the language you're speaking is like a soft skill,
Mm-hmm.
but also like cooking. Is cooking like a soft skill?
Yeah. Cooking would definitely be a soft skill, but not one you would get a job for, unless you were applying to be a cook.
I see.
I mean, if you were applying to be a cook, it would be a technical skill, right? But like, if you're really good at cooking, you know, like, not to talk about myself again, but I have like, I do canning, like I make my own jam,
Oh,
stuff like that. It's really cool, and it's like takes science and stuff, but like I'm not gonna get a job with it. It's, you know, it's my jam, it's for me
Yeah.
and my family. That's what the jam is for. And also, it's the way that I get out of having to buy people things at Christmas. That's how I do it. But yeah, no, like stuff like that, that's definitely a soft skill. But like, it's like you have the domain of soft skills, which for us is basically everything not having to do with a computer, right? Then you have like the domain, much smaller domain of job applicable soft skills, right? These include communication, right? The communication skills. Speaking in front of people would be considered communication skills in this category as well. Basically, that's the purpose of the tech writing course, right? Like I have one of the faculty members that I talk to, John Holloway, who's in the networking side of things. He often, very often, tells students anytime they say anything about the tech writing course, he's like, that is the most important class that you take at this institution, hands down. And if you listen to a program of study committee, like the program of study committee is where like industry professionals come in and tell us what we need to change in our programming to meet industry requirements. Are you surprised that such a thing exists? You talk to the people in the POS committee, and like you ask a standards question like what's the most important skill you look for in an employee, and every single time they say communication, every single time. So that's what they're talking about with that's what they're talking about with soft skills. So clear and precise communication. Even though, as I said, I kind of consider that like a borderline technical skill. Punctuality is a soft skill. I know that like it's not one of the, you can't really train punctuality, but showing up on time and getting work done on time is like a very important workplace skill, and some people don't have it, actually, if you can imagine. And people who don't have it have difficulty holding down jobs until they get that sorted out, and then they can start holding jobs down. That's, you know, like, especially if you're working kind of in the sort of lower rungs of the economy and service work and that sort of thing. Like there's fewer ways to kill your job faster than to just not show up for a couple of shifts, right? And like, you know, there are all kinds of reasons, but generally your employer won't care about them unless you've broken a leg, right? So that's also a soft skill, is showing up. But you can't really put that one on a resume, right? You're basically being judged on your showing up ability by the interview itself, and are you on time to it, right? Like recently, I was with one of the other faculty members. I was interviewing some CSEP students, like for a lab assistant position, and like there was a short list of 3 candidates, and one of them was like 10 minutes late to the interview, and it's like, well, I could pick this person who was 10 minutes late to the interview because the person claimed they were having technical problems, which it's easy enough to claim, right? And also, like, you should have sorted out the technical issues before, you know, the time the call was to take place, right? If it's an interview, right? That's kind of your first test, right? Is, are you here on time, right? The other 2 candidates were there on time. In fact, they were there a bit early, so that made that particular decision very easy, right? So it's very important to be there on time. That's a soft skill as well. Like a lot of people kind of think that like personability is like personality meshing is a soft skill. It's like, I agree it's important. I'm not sure I would like consider it to be like a skill you can work on. Like you kind of either get along with, you're the type of person who gets along with people or you're not, you know? And it depends on the type of people that you're trying to get along with, but you know, like that's less, you have less control over that one than others, right? And sometimes you just genuinely don't fit the culture of an organization, and like, I'm kind of always of the opinion that you shouldn't try too hard to fit somewhere that you're not going to have a fun time anyway, you know? Like, if the culture isn't good, like you can tell that like you don't truck with these particular people, like you're also interviewing them, right? This is sometimes kind of lost on people. When you're in an interview, you should also be thinking about, do I want to work for them, right? Now, that's a harder, you know, the incentive is for them and not for you, right? It's weird to be offered a job and, you know, say, well, I didn't really particularly like your organization when I got the interview. Normally, people will take the job and figure that out in the ensuing months, right? And then they'll leave for one reason or another. But you know, because once again, you got to put bread on the table. But you know, anyway, I think that's as much as I want to say about soft skills. So that's the wrong set of slides. Here we go. Of the examples in this slide deck, I like this one the best. Like, much of the time, like, the logo is like probably more useful for immediate identification than reading a bunch of things, right? So use the logos, that's my advice. You probably don't have space for it on a written resume, but you will on a portfolio website, right? So put the logos in, they're nice, they look pretty. If you can get them so that they all have one uniform-ish theme, that's even better, right? As such. Flask has kind of a weird logo, doesn't it? Is that like a hot pepper? It doesn't look like a flask. Like a drinking horn? A la the Vikings or something? Anyway. if I were you guys, I would try to steer clear of inspirational quotes. They don't really add anything. They will probably just sound pretentious. It's like, you know, that guy who puts like the inspirational quote in the email, you know, the email tagline, right? It's like, oh, it's, you know, it's nice, it's slightly cool the first time you see it. It's like, oh, look, an inspirational quote. By the like 5th or 6th interchange you've had with the guy, it's like, you know, it's just clutter. Avoid clutter. So, soft skills example. Besides tech, that's not a bad way to introduce it. You know, I am a cinephile who with love towards sci-fi, mystery, and heist movies. I might quibble with use of English language there. With love towards is awkward phrasing. I like sci-fi, mystery, and heist movies is a much clearer and shorter way to say that. Like, this probably didn't have to be 3 lines, right? I can talk endlessly about alien conspiracy theories, existential crises, question mark, simulation, and psychology. This might be like old school advice, like I'm talking like from the 90s advice, but like also like, and I know this is like, you know, like try not to like be too vocal about your politics on your anything you put online. Like, it's like, unless you happen across people who share your exact politics, like, I'm not sure why I bring politics up. It's kind of like, I don't know, some of these kind of like lapse into, like, you know, it's a weird time we live in, you know, but like these are kind of, to some degree, like politics adjacent topics at the moment. So I would probably, like, you probably don't want to label yourself as a conspiracy theorist in 2025, right? If you can avoid it. What you do on your own time is your personal life, right? So just like, try to avoid politics because, you know, unless you're banking on getting into like a organization that very explicitly has one political sort of orientation and you share it and that's why you want to work for them, like you're probably just going to run across people who are like not sharing what the things you believe are, and that's, you know, may do more to hurt your chances than help them. So just try to be neutral on things, right? Like I was of course raised in the 90s when like an air of political neutrality was like essential to professionalism in any career. Keeping your, you know, it was considered within the sphere of your personal life and not in the sphere of your professional life. And, you know, maybe I am in fact displaying my own politics by saying that, but, you know, maybe I'm just old, you know. Maybe I'm just old, but, you know, maybe I just long for a day when things were less complicated. But yeah, I still think it's a good general rule to kind of like avoid political topics wherever possible. Projects! Now we get to the main meat of the thing. The main purpose of the portfolio website is to show off the projects you've built. Projects can be certain types of assignments. This is advice that I give people going through the classes that they go through. Some things work as portfolio projects, other things decidedly do not. It depends on how prescriptive the assignment was, right? Y'all took JavaScript, right? Y'all remember JavaScript? well, hopefully the class more so than the language. JavaScript, you did the assignment where it was make a video game, right? That was before or after your time?
Was it using SVG images or?
That's right, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, so that one, people take that idea and run with it, right? People do some pretty incredible work for that. The top end of the submissions I get for that assignment 4, I often just write into the comments, welcome to your first portfolio project, right? Like, if you put a lot of sweat, blood, and tears into it, and it's good, like, that's a thing you can put up, right? Now, something like JavaScript assignment 5, which probably not many of you remember, it's that deadly boring Ajax request a bunch of Star Wars pictures one, right? Not so much, right? There's nothing really original about it, right? You're literally, it's like 3 Ajax queries and that's it, right? So, you know, the program's supposed to sprinkle in a few of these for you. You know, that's the purpose of them. But yeah, like, man, some of those, I had one submission, I think in the winter term, that was like, the student like actually made like Wolfenstein. It was quite cool. Like, they used like calculated projection to calculate how like large a rectangle should be relative to perspective, and it was a 3D environment done in 2D rectangles that were projected into a level, and like there was a smiley face that chased you, and it was basically Wolfenstein / Slenderman, and like that thing, that was a portfolio project, hands down. One of the 20 coin flipping apps that I got, not so much, right? You want it to be impressive. So, yes. Work done, oh, and your capstone. Obviously your capstone. Work done on a volunteer basis, pro bono work, websites you make for charity. We have a slide talking about doing websites for charity coming up. Passion projects, things you made for fun, because you wanted to learn something and you had an idea and you just did it, right? Not for school, not for work, you just did it. And that's perhaps the easiest one to get into, because you all could go home and start one tonight, right? Certain types of work done professionally, for example, you made a web app as part of your job. However, work that you do professionally may or may not be possible to be in your portfolio, because, you know, here's a question, is it open source? If it's not open source, then you can't share the source code, right? So, you know, yeah. So, schoolwork. Ask your instructor before hosting schoolwork somewhere public, like GitHub. Sometimes, if you take, like, assignments which are basic, and you put them up on GitHub, what you are doing is providing solutions for cheaters, right? If it's something that's sufficiently unique and distinct, such as the aforementioned JavaScript assignment 4, this isn't so much of a problem, because, you know, cheaters will try to avoid things that look, you know, particularly unique, right? But if it's just like those 3 Ajax queries, you know, let me tell you, folks, they get stolen all the time, and not just from, you know, people's Git repos, like, you know, the global corporate hyperplagiarism tool known as ChatGPT also skims these things and picks things up. Also, some assignments get reused from one year to the next. Yes, the big issue though is that most assignments all involve building something that meets the same specific requirements, right? So, you know, you're supposed to have this button, it's supposed to cause this function to execute in this drop down. It's like, have you designed anything? Right? No. That's not the purpose of the assignment. The purpose of the assignment is to learn the rudiments of the language that you're studying. Right? So that's what you're doing. So, schoolwork like the capstone project, however, is different. Capstones all have to be their own thing. You guys will be heading into capstone next semester for capstone prep, right? Yep. Getting close to the end. Yep.
I have some questions. Actually, I'll wait. But I have some questions regarding some project.
Okay. I probably don't know the answers.
Okay,
I mostly teach in like second and third semester.
I see.
Yeah. It's actually kind of a different thing for me to be teaching this far up in the program. So, yes. Again, there are some assignments that your instructors may be okay with you hosting. Again, see that JavaScript assignment. And in mobile web programming, multiple assignments are like miniature capstones where students decide on the idea and meet very general requirements. So that's a recommendation from Kevin. If you have a very open-ended assignment in a course, just ask your professor first to see if it's okay to host it, because it might be. But you know, your professor should be able to tell you something intelligent about it. Volunteer work. And I'm not talking about working in soup kitchens, although working in soup kitchens is also very good volunteer work. How do you get experience as a developer when you can't get a job as a developer? Right? You need experience to get a job, you need a job to get experience. You are caught in a vicious cycle. The answer, give it away for free, at least for a period of time. So, doing work for free doesn't mean working unpaid internships, which are technically illegal in Canada, although they do happen, right? If you are approached by a company who doesn't want to pay you, you should go find a company that will pay you, right? No matter what kind of promises they make. You know, like, I'll tell you another story, just a short one. Before I went back to grad school, I was working in the solar panel installation industry. There was a small boom in solar panel installation, like rooftop, like residential solar panel installations, about 15 years ago, because the government had a very lucrative contract. They were offering people to do such things. I was working as a junior engineer in a very, very small firm. It was like the install guy and his crew, the engineer, and then me, and that was the whole company, right? And that company didn't do well. Basically, there was a provincial election and speculation on whether or not the Conservatives would get elected and end that lucrative contract was enough to dry up business to the point where the company couldn't pay me anymore. And we weren't making a lot of money to begin with, despite working very, very hard. And basically, I was unfortunately put into the position of my, the owner, my boss, saying, well, I can't pay you now, but if you just like see us through for a few weeks, I'm sure things will turn around, right? And so I was presented with a moral dilemma. Do I keep working for these people who do not have money to pay me, believing that they will eventually have money to pay me, or do I leave? And I chose to leave because, you know, you shouldn't work if there's no guarantee of a paycheck, right? And I'm glad I did, because within a month, the guy who was the owner of that company had gone back to BC, where he, you know, came from. So, like, or maybe it was a couple of months, but let's just say they did not have the money at the time to meet their obligation to my paycheck, nor did they have it at any point in the future. It was correct for me to leave at that point. So, basically, when they start talking about, like, talking in that direction, it's time to go find something else, right? Never become so loyal to a company that, like, you'll work for them for free, because, you know, the favor won't be returned, you know? And I know this might make me a miserable son of a cuss, but I'm trying to give you practical advice. And the practical advice is, don't work if you don't get a paycheck. That being said, charities. So, charitable organizations often run on the goodwill of the people who, you know, are involved with them. Most of the time they won't have technical skills, right? Because, you know, rare is the programmer who decides to start up an animal shelter or whatever it is, right? Now, you're not probably looking for the big ones, right? Ones with, like, a lot of government funding probably have this already provided for, but, like, you know, maybe your religious organization, whichever one that you happen to be a part of, if you're a part of one, needs the website for the church redone or something, right? You can do it, right? You are a person who can do that sort of thing, right? You know, people like, so this is the type of thing that you can kind of break into as a, you know, like, you know, maybe there's like, you know, a historical society, right? A historical society that does, like, you know, battlefield reenactments or something, right? They're unlikely to have a website, right? Or one that's any good. Probably they have one from, like, many years ago, and they've been keeping that going, but, you know, maybe it's about time they updated the website, right? You can even sometimes cold call these people, although it's always best to, like, you know, go after people that you have some kind of established relationship with. This is what networking is, guys, right? I mean, yeah, some people are shaking their heads like, oh, I'm miserable and I know literally no people, right? You know, it's like, maybe you don't know anybody, but, like, you know, maybe you know somebody who knows somebody, right? That's like the idea behind networking. Definitely, like, networking degrades with the orderedness of the relation. Like, first order relations are obviously strongest. Second order, it degrades a bit, falls off quickly after that, right? But, you know, again, if you don't know anybody, you can just, like, here's a strategy, right? Just check your local paper, you know, see what charities are doing stuff. Maybe see if they have a website listed. If they don't, contact them and say, hey, do you need a website? I'm a web developer. I'm looking for, you know, some experience web developing. I don't mind doing a website for you if you don't mind. And, like, they're probably not going to turn down free labor unless your labor really, really sucks, which is possible. Maybe you're garbage at what you do. I know I'm garbage at what I do. So, yes. Sometimes it's like also like social media organization, you know. Sometimes it's crowdfunding campaign, maybe. I draw the line before this one though. Like, don't make people a game pro bono. The point is that you're helping an organization or individual that needs help. You're showing that you understand their needs and can communicate and can build/do something. If you do a good job, you also get a reference out of it, right? Which is also a thing that you probably want if you're applying places, right? So, you can cold call nonprofit and charity organizations. Just email them to ask them if they could use any help. Another big way to volunteer is to contribute to open source projects, but I've already spoken about that at length today. Here's a guide on contributing to open source projects. There's a whole culture around open source, right? So to some degree you have to kind of inculcate yourself in that culture. But yeah. So yes. You can also create software based on your interests and purely for fun. It probably doesn't matter what you make, so long as you make something and you like it. I had a passion project of a pinball game, and that got me a position teaching. So figure that one out, right? Like, I didn't make a passion project of like, oh, here's some assignments for a class I don't teach at an institution I never worked for. You know, it's like, it's not the sort of thing people do for fun unless you're crazy, right? And it's very, very important not to come off as crazy during an interview. That's the one thing you want, is to give the impression of being well balanced, right? So again, you have to get real good at hiding it, you know, push it way down. If you can't think of an idea, there are websites that list portfolio project ideas. However, come up with your own. Please, for the love of all that's holy, come up with your own. You've got something, you must have something you're interested in. If you can't think of anything, just wait, and an idea will come to you. You just, like, give yourself some time, you know? Like, yeah, like, making someone else's passion project. I can't think of, like, a worse use of your time, you know? So, oftentimes, the source code for professional work cannot be linked to. You may still be able to link to the end product, you know, link to the page on the App Store where the product is sold. This is fine, right? You shouldn't expect, like, let's take video game development, for instance. You shouldn't it's unreasonable for the employer to expect a free copy of your company's game on your portfolio website, right? Can you imagine the exploits, right? Ask your manager or whoever paid you to do the work whether you can use it, right? If you are going the route of volunteering, I would say be upfront with the people you're volunteering that you want to use this as a portfolio project for your resume. So, like, you know, if it's okay, I'd like to, like, link to this at the end, and, you know, like, people are generally pretty good about that kind of stuff. You just have to ask. It's when you don't ask and just do stuff behind people's back, that's when people start getting arty about it. So, you might be able to find some paid work experience on freelancing websites, such as freelancer.ca and upwork.com. Freelance work is quite competitive. You might be able to get some, maybe. Like, it's kind of like freelance work is like your next tier up from volunteer work if you can't get into like a proper position. So doing some freelance work isn't a bad idea either. You might even get paid. Exactly how projects are listed varies greatly. Depends on the type of project. Depends on, the way that your portfolio is configured. At a minimum, the project name should be listed. And in terms of other potential details, you may wish a short description, a link to the source code where possible. Definitely list the technologies used, right? Like, it's like, oh, I made this. It's like, okay. It's like, I made this with Next.js. It's like, oh, okay, you made this with Next.js, right? List contributions. Was this a solo project? If not, what did you do versus what everybody else did? Link to the end product and possibly even video demonstrations. How does it work? Although I would say probably they're not going to watch a video. Resume. Even though a portfolio website plays a similar role to a resume, often developers will link to a PDF copy of a traditional resume. Resumes can list non-technical work and other details employers find interesting. It also makes it easier to do keyword searches over your resume to determine automatically whether you meet the job qualifications. However, just bear in mind, if you're putting your resume up on your portfolio and it's publicly accessible on the internet, maybe don't put your home address on it. Yeah? Okay? Just keep in mind, it's the internet. You probably shouldn't put your cell phone number there, and you shouldn't put your home address, definitely. And even your email is like, you could get a lot of spam. This is why, contact forms are a thing, because you can't spam them quite so easily. Listing contact information is essential, though. Your portfolio website is how people may find you, decide to work with you. They need to be able to contact you, and contact you through, in the sort of present moment, you should be linking your like LinkedIn thing, all the social media things. At least, all of the professional social media accounts that you all have, as I'm sure all of you have multiple accounts, and you have one for business and one for pleasure, right? If you don't, make multiple social media accounts, have one for business and one for pleasure, because, while you may find your, interests and who you follow interesting, your employer probably won't. Yes, it's also a good idea to link to professional social media profiles, such as LinkedIn. It's also, in general, it's a good idea to have a LinkedIn profile when you're starting your career. I basically only got one because I got tired of students asking me if I had one. That's it. Like, I have never needed one. I shall never need one. I have a slightly, like, if you look up my LinkedIn profile, I have like a slightly meme-ish profile picture, which is definitely against the culture on LinkedIn. It's like, it's because I don't care about LinkedIn, right? I have contempt for the platform. Because I'm too cool for it, and I don't actually need it, that's why. Experienced developers joke that LinkedIn is filled with recruiters, which can get annoying at a certain point, but as a new developer, don't you generally want to be recruited? So going where the recruiters are is perhaps a good idea? GitHub offers GitHub Pages that allow developers to host simple portfolio websites on GitHub. You can have your portfolio website hosted along with your repositories. Your public ones will show up on GitHub. I've mentioned this before, but like your commit graph is like super interesting and easy information to see, like, okay, this person says they're a software developer, but how many times a month do they actually commit something, right? So, URL is username.github.io. It's nice to have your own domain, but generally, having github.io is perfectly acceptable in our industry. You can always redirect to a yourname.com as well. So, do you want to make a website using GitHub Pages? All right, let's do it. It really doesn't matter how many slides are in the presentation. I'm sorry that took so long. I feel like we had some interesting conversations along the way, though. We also have code reviews to talk about. Let's make the website. So there's no actual like instructions on how to do this in the course material itself. This is not because people are being lazy. It's because this is the sort of thing that's subject to change, and it's really best to just look that up at the time you want to do it, right? So, yes. Everybody sign in to GitHub, please, if you haven't already. So, make a new repository. Must be public. Pages. Test for me. Description, a test of pages. Public. No readme, no get ignore, yes, yes, yes. Create repository. There you go. Now, yeah, you gotta put something in it. Where is it here? Create a new file, there you go. Why did you hide that? H1, a website. H1, there we go. Name this index.html. Commit. Commit. There we go. Settings. Now. I don't remember. All right. Code and automation, right? Oh, pages. Sorry to bottom. Alright. Source, deploy from a branch. Which branch? Main. Save. There we go. With GitHub Enterprise, you can restrict your access to your GitHub Pages site by publishing it privately. Privately published sites share your internal documentation or knowledge base with members of your enterprise. You don't have to worry about that because you're not an enterprise and you don't have anything that's, well, maybe you have some interesting secrets, but you probably shouldn't put them on the internet. All right, custom domain. Custom domains allow you to serve from something other than this, but let's just use that for now. All right, there we go. Save, save, save. There we go, there we go. Is there a confirmation? All right, now let's go to github.io. Come on. Yeah. All right. Is there a save button I didn't hit or something? All right. It really wants you to use this thing called Jekyll, but I'm pretty sure you can just do the regular HTML as well. I don't know. That is HTTPS. All right. Yeah.
You have the repo name and the link for the pages. Like I think it's supposed to be your username, but github.io / and then repo name.
Okay. Yeah, possibly. Ah, there you go. Thank you. Bro, there we go. So there we have it, a website. And, a certain amount of confuddlement aside, that was pretty easy, right? Yeah, so there you go. Free web hosting on GitHub. Now, pretty sure you can't do anything server-side here. This will be client-side at best, right? Yeah?
Are you ready to go on another tangent? Because I might go on another tangent.
I'll try to keep this one short.
For websites, server hosting.
Mhm.
Where do you go to host your own HTML website if you want to host a portfolio, for example?
This is the easiest.
Okay.
If you you can even change the domain name so it doesn't even look like GitHub Pages. If you want something a bit more substantial, let's say you wanted to do some server-side code, right? This is part of a course I'm currently working on developing, the Node.js rewrite for server-side. But here are your steps, right? Develop it, containerize it using Docker, ship it to a cloud server provider such as Google Cloud. I think I've looked at it a little bit. You get $100 of free Microsoft Azure credit as a student of this institution. What I've heard is that you burn through that pretty quickly. I've done a certain amount of like looking around and comparing. I'm by no means an expert in cloud computing, but it seemed like Google Cloud has the most favorable terms and like will put a hard cap on the free version, like not becoming a thing that's paid. You have something intelligent to say?
If you can Dockerize your app, you can usually, if you can rent a VPS host, you can usually get one from like $2 to like $5 for a really cheap one, and then just upload your container and run it on there.
Oh. Do you know where? Because I think that you can the hosting it one, I was going to pay like 2 years up front.
I use a website called Ionos. You can get, you used to be able to get a $1 VPS on there, but now you have to, it's, the cheapest one they have is $2, but you have to pay a $15 upfront setup fee if you get the really cheap one, which is,
$15 though? I'm assuming this is American.
no, it's Canadian.
Oh wow,
I'm pretty
okay.
sure it's a Canadian company.
Oh man, I was about to make the joke, so like $100 American then? Or $100 Canadian. Yeah, what he said.
Alright.
But yeah, like, I think you would agree that like, at the moment, like, containerizing it is like, once you've containerized it, you can ship it to a lot of different platforms.
Oh, so I'm doing it.
Yeah, so like that's, once you've written your web application, the next thing to do is figure out how to containerize it. And that's the new middle step in deployment. That is the new thing. But yeah, containers, man. And you'll be better set up for like doing that now that you've taken this course, because like Docker is very much a Linux application, even if it's pretending to run on Windows, you know.
That is definitely the best ever. The Windows switches.
Yeah, well, it's I believe so. Like they do have a Docker desktop thingy, probably running
It's
it.
so weird that sometimes it doesn't work. I did that
Yeah.
on my co-op and it's tough to get it working.
Yeah, not to mention, like, Windows kind of doesn't get it, which is hilarious. Windows, or Microsoft doesn't get a lot, but like, one of the things they don't get is the point of containers, because they've made it, maybe this is no longer the case, but they've made it so that a container running like a Windows server or a Windows, like any Windows operating system, has to be run on a Windows host, right? So, exactly. So, like, but for licensing reasons, right? We can't have all of these duplicated versions of Windows running around. We charge for that, baby, right? So, I'm really, really hoping that Microsoft dies a slow, painful death in the coming decades because of their, ludicrous decisions that they make, and not understanding things. But, anyway, it'd take quite a lot to take down Microsoft, but I feel we're up to the task, Good. So, we have a website. That was easy. Do that. That's like, this is a proper website on the internet. Anyone can visit this. It is socially acceptable for you as a software engineer to use this. All right? Particularly if you're a front-end guy who doesn't like servers. So, any questions, comments, concerns? Okie dokie. Let's see here. Where are we here? Okay. So, code reviews then. Yeah, I know it's getting late. There we go. Code reviews. So, a code review is a software quality assurance process where code is examined by at least one person that did not write the code. So somebody who didn't work on it. the terms code inspection or peer review are sometimes used. The person that examines the code is called the reviewer. There could be multiple reviewers, and the author of the piece of code could also be involved in the process, possibly or possibly not. Sometimes that's considered to contaminate the process. The code should stand on its own merit. So, code reviews are ultimately about improving the quality of the software. Research has shown that code reviews can be more effective at identifying deeper issues in code than even testing, which makes sense. You have an experienced developer look at code. It does a better, the experienced developer does a better job at identifying the problems that experienced developer themselves have run into than an automated suite of tests. The problem with, of course, the automated suite of tests is that, you can only anticipate so many situations, right? Testing, it's not possible for it to be exhaustive, right? I'm sure they talked about this in your testing class that you did, right? Yeah? Hopefully they beat you senseless with this, right? Testing can't be exhaustive. Testing can't be exhaustive. Did they tell you why testing can't be exhaustive? Did they mention the words state explosion problem? Well, that's the actual reason that you can't do exhaustive testing, right? So imagine this, right? You have a function that takes one integer. How many possible values are there for that integer? Assuming it's 32-bit.
Like 4 billion.
Yes, about 4 billion. You can run through 4 billion tests. That's easy enough. You can exhaustively test every single value of that integer. What if you have 2 integers?
Is this a table notation problem?
Can you run that many tests?
It'd take a long time.
It would take a long time.
Without matches.
So I will spare you the agony of me using Google as a calculator and just tell you that, the thing I usually say is, like, if you take half of the length of a tweet, I don't know, is there still a character limit on those things? I don't know. Maybe, yeah. 80 characters. Let's take 80 characters, right? This is called computational complexity, right? The number of possible, like if you take all of those characters and all of the bit combinations that you can create for all of those characters, and remember this is testing, so even invalid combinations should be tested, right? If you take all of those combinations, you get enough test cases that if you could run a billion of them a second, this is how it works, right? If you take a billion test cases and put inside each atom in the universe that number of test cases, right? And you zoom out and there's a universe whose atoms are composed of universes that have all of the atoms that contain the test cases. And you do that, I think, about 3 or 4 layers. That's how many test cases you're talking about. It's not possible to test exhaustively. The numbers become stupidly big. It's related to the problem of cryptography. Maybe it can be done with quantum computing. Personally, I've never seen a quantum computer. I think they're a myth. I would have said the same thing about AI about 10 years ago, but, I don't know. I've never seen one, so I don't think it exists.
You ever hear of Majorna? Majorna?
Majorno? What's Majorno?
I don't know. It's some I saw like an advertisement a couple months ago. It's like, hey, the first quantum CPU. I was like, I don't know what that means.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, I have.
I'm just getting ads for
It
drugs.
was like a Microsoft thing.
Oh God, Microsoft.
Yeah. Let me see.
Hmm.
Major Anna.
Major
And then
Anna,
ANA.
like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Major Anna 1.
Major Anna Fermion.
No, it should be Major Anna 1. Like the number 1. Yeah. Yeah. They were touting this pretty heavily a couple months ago, but I did not understand the significance of it.
Nah, it's still fake. Just because they made a chip doesn't mean it's real. Where's my fusion power? That's what I want to say. You know? Fusion has been 10 years into the future for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, and like if they ever actually do develop quantum computing, goodbye civilization. The whole civilization is made on cryptography now. Like everything is cryptography. If they break cryptography, they break everything. So anyway, what do we do? What is good software? Software that doesn't break. When we say that software is good quality, this can actually mean several things. A software requirement describes what a system should do and what it sometimes should not do, and sometimes how it should do it. Software that does what it's supposed to do is obviously good software. Does the software calculate the class average correctly? We call these sorts of requirements functional requirements as they capture what a system is supposed to do. So let me ask you a question. Does ChatGPT do what it's supposed to do? Is it good software? There's a correct answer. It can't even do math. It's not good software. Does not meet functional requirements. So, we can often use software testing to check that software has met functional requirements. Software testing is a large subject in its own right, but essentially we check that outputs from software match expected given inputs. If you didn't know this already, the path to senior developer most frequently runs through the testing department. Yes. What about internal quality of the software? If we write a Java program as one big class or object, how difficult would it be to maintain? How about if we write a Java program split up logically into different classes and objects? Will that be easier to maintain? Everybody? Will that be easier to maintain? Everybody who thinks yes. Everybody who thinks no. Everybody who wants me to stop talking so we can go home. Really, you think that if you use objects and classes, it doesn't mean that it's more maintainable?
Oh, I thought you were saying if you use one big class object.
Oh, okay, I should have phrased it.
Yes.
Nah, I messed up the functional requirements of the question. Yeah. Yes, obviously, like using the abstraction method means that your software is better. Non-functional requirements are requirements that capture the non-functional qualities of a system. Non-functional requirements include categories of requirements like performance requirements. For example, the website must have an average page load time of 2 seconds would be an example of a performance requirement. It is I often say in second semester, I don't care how you get it working, just get it working, right? Because that's the stage people are at in learning to code. You guys should be getting past that now, especially if you've been through data structures and algorithms, right? You should be able to write increasingly efficient code, right? And part of that is understanding when you perform an operation, how many operations you're actually performing, right? Question?
I'm sorry, I was just.
Okay. Non-functional requirements also include categories that are focused on the internal quality of a system. One thing that I've found that companies occasionally do is they have naming conventions for like variables and that sort of thing that you have to follow. So it depends on the size of the company, but like sometimes I've seen it where like a company requires that you put the type information like either appended or prepended to the variable name, which in certain types of programming contexts can be very, very helpful, right? So non-functional requirements may also include compliance with the company's internal set of standards for code, right? So, maintainability is the quality of how easy it is to maintain a piece of software. Maintainability is a non-functional requirement. Software costs over time, images. So, yes, some of these are more and less. I'm looking for data that doesn't look fake. That looks fake, you know? This looks like real data, it's too jagged. So, you have your initial cost of development, right? That is a certain amount of your cost. Your maintenance cost for software is often more expensive than the initial development, right? So the maintainability, the ease of maintaining your software, is often directly correlated to how much money it takes to run the software, right? So that's why we keep blasting you with classes and objects and all of this abstract stuff, because that stuff increases maintainability. Where? What slides? Slides. There we go. No. Here. There we go. Better modularized code is more maintainable. Using descriptive variable and function names and method names and class names makes it more maintainable. Commenting makes it more maintainable. Closely related to maintainability is readability. Is the code easy to read and understand? This is a problem that I traditionally have with PHP. PHP developers are awful people who don't write very maintainable code. They do things like use assignment statements inside of if statement predicates. That's terrible, terrible coding. I often refer to it as cursed, actually, cursed PHP. When I write an algorithm, I will often eschew a lot of the fancy stuff that could condense it down in favor of just having it, black and white, clear as crystal. Partially because I'm teaching, right? And people need easily understood code on the slide, right? But also, it's just generally, it serves no purpose to make your code overly complicated and people can't understand it, even you, right? Sometimes write 10 lines when you could do it in 2. Sometimes do that, right? Extensibility is the quality of how easy it is to extend code with new features. Also closely related to maintainability. Sometimes extensibility and maintainability are joined together as modifiability or evolvability. These are all words that were made up. These are not real words, but that's okay. While detecting functional defects related to functional requirements is absolutely part of code review, Code reviews are a chance to analyze internal quality of the software, such as maintainability. 75% of the code defects found during code reviews affect maintainability rather than functionality, according to this source. Source? Oh no, I did it! Oh. Page 10, okay. Yeah. This is a paper. Okay, we're not going to read the paper. Sorry, Kevin, we're not reading the paper. The paper exists, though. You should know the paper exists. Boop. There we go. Code refactoring is a process of restructuring code without altering its ultimate functionality. So, basically, when the code reviewer says, everywhere you did this, replace it with that, that is refactoring code. That's the term for that. If you notice in IntelliJ, one of the options it gives you is refactor. There are a couple of like kind of well-known ones, right? Common programming things people do that can and should be refactored into nicer forms. Sometimes it's like, oh, did you know that Java has this fancy way of doing, or JavaScript has this fancy way of doing switch cases that like involves an arrow operator? Have I got the right language? But anyway, doesn't matter. Replacing a switch statement with like a nicer looking one is refactoring code. Switch statements are useful but look awful, right? Technical debt is the implied cost of future refactoring when choosing an easier solution instead of a solution that would involve more work. As technical debt accumulates, it can become difficult to modify software in the future. Have I shown you the picture of the Kludge Bridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's technical debt, right? Code reviews can identify issues that can be solved with refactoring to reduce technical debt. Similar concepts to infrastructure debt in a city or institution. So, how else do code reviews help? We can also check for security issues. That's most of my purpose when I'm marking a PHP assignment, is I'm doing a code review for security issues. Is SQL injection attacks, are they prevented? Are cross-site scripting attacks prevented? Did I like moan about that thing that the students did, leaving the filter off of filter input in PHP? I moaned about that, right? That's what I'm talking about, right? We can also check for best practices. Are we using exception handling, or are we returning false? Because if we're returning false, and the language supports exception handling, we could be doing, we have code that is deeply suboptimal. Is logging used throughout the program? Sorry, Kevin. Writing log messages to files improves the traceability of the software, i.e. how easy it is to trace, yes, we know what tracing is. Is the software well designed? So, there's this whole new like batch of tools related to the DevOps tool chain. Have you guys heard of Ansible? So Ansible is a whole tool, and the only purpose of it is to sift log files for important, pertinent information. Right? That's the general thrust of it anyways. Right? Like, voluminous quantities of log data are now generated to the point where we need specialized tools just to get the useful information out of that log data. But if we didn't keep the log data in the first place, there would be nothing to search. By the way, grep is your best friend. So, like honestly, like if you can just learn to like think in terms of grep searches, you will become very powerful very quickly. You'll be able to find anything in no time at all. Are style guides being followed? This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Style guides give uniform appearance and structure to code via a set of guidelines. This also has an effect on maintainability and readability because that's the purpose of the style guide, right? It's to increase the maintainability of the code. For example, are we using 2 spaces or 4 spaces to indent the code? Or are we using tabs? Or the most cursed of all setups, we're using tabs, but it's been configured in the editor to be 2 spaces. Just hit space twice. Coding standards provide guidelines to be followed for decisions like these, in which in some cases are fairly subjective. Like this is a well-trod debate in software. It's like tabs or spaces. It's like there are factions, you know. Okay, how many people are tabs? How many people are spaces? Probably because you have to do Linux stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stuff from Vim, it doesn't, sometimes the tab indentation doesn't work very well.
Yeah, there are certain things where like you actually cannot use tabs. Like makefiles, I think you can't use tabs. You have to use spaces. It's in the program.
I think Python wrote spaces for me.
Yeah.
The moment I got on Python, because that's the first thing they teach in the program, I was like, this is so great. I don't have to worry about the spaces.
Yeah. So, the concepts of best practices and style guidelines are often merged together into a set of coding standards which provide overall guidelines, i.e. both stylistic and structural guidelines. Now, hello. So there are a number of different things you can use. I'm aware of this one. Like, once you've got a rule, right, it is possible to write a program that checks to see if that rule is being consistently applied. One such program is CPP check, which is for C and C++. It checks a lot of stylistic stuff that basically the compiler doesn't care about. It will check all kinds of things: division by 0, dead pointers, integer overflows, null pointer dereferences. These are like real problems in the language in C, C++. CPP check just checks to see if, you know, it's not a 100% guarantee that nothing gets through, but it's certainly more check than you had before, right? And it also checks stylistic, like more style. Those are like hard requirements. It also checks stylistic things, right? Coding standards. Where were we? Here we go. We say that coding standards are opinionated because they take a position on how things should be done, because it results in some advantages. Unopinionated would mean that multiple options are allowed. Opinionated implies that other ways may be valid or advantageous in other ways, but that a position is being taken nonetheless. So basically, like, in order to write a standard, you have to make some decisions. Are all of those decisions going to be optimal? No. Are programmers exactly the sort of people who are going to be nitpicky about the rules in a coding standards document? You bet your bottom dollar. So this is kind of the way of like avoiding a certain amount of conflict and saying, if you don't like our coding standard, go make your own coding standard. You know, we have our opinion, you have your opinion. We can agree to have a difference of opinion. So, coding standards may issue guidelines for things like code spacing. Tabs versus spaces may be in the standard. How many spaces constitute an indent? Where do we put curly braces? Does the curly brace go on the line with the predicate, or does it go on the line afterwards? the answer is it's on the same line, obviously, unless you're a C# programmer. But I don't know why C# decides to put it on the next line. It just looks ugly to me. Doesn't it look ugly to you?
Probably just a style choice. They always
Yeah.
do that, like, just to look different.
I mean, but it just. Anyway, comments. Do functions and classes need to have a header comment? The header comment might document parameters, return values, and other properties. So understand that JavaDoc, right? There's nothing hard-coded into Java that created JavaDoc. It's an external stylistic thing, right? There's a standards document. Ooh, by the way, did you know that JavaDoc itself has like a compiler, and you can run your Java code through it to check to see if you're compliant with the JavaDoc specification? When I teach Java, I do this to my students. They sometimes get 100 errors. And I know I have an exceptional student when the student hands in their Java assignment and not one stylistic error. That is impressive. That's impressive to me. If you want a reference, do that for me. So, managed to submit an assignment with no JavaDoc errors. Oh, we'll hire him. Yes. Lengths of files, classes, and functions. For example, no function should be more than 200 lines of code. Not a bad idea, actually. If you can't say it in 200 lines of code, you probably aren't modularizing it correctly, right? Naming conventions. Camel case versus snake case. Nesting. How many control structures deep should nesting occur? That can get out of hand too. I don't know if you've noticed. If an if statement inside of an if statement, inside of a loop, inside of an if statement is 4 levels deep, maybe that's too deep, right? The deeper the nesting, the harder it is to figure out what's going on. It creates poor readability. So, write some functions. Standards can revolve around exception handling and security practices, as I'm sure we can all agree, and many other things. Basically, anything is on the table with a coding standard. If a human being can recognize it by reading the code, they can put it in a coding standard. How else can reviews help? Reviews improve knowledge sharing by having developers communicate and understand code written by other developers. Software developers, as has been previously mentioned, are notoriously reclusive. It might be an accomplishment to get 2 software developers to talk to each other, right? Particularly when they're not taking a class with each other, you know? Out there in the ether. Code reviews lower the bus factor of a software project as developers come to know sections of the code that they may not normally contribute to. You guys remember what the bus factor is?
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
Sorry? Go ahead.
It's having to account on one person to be able to accomplish that one thing, and if they happen to be in an accident, they can't be there to fix it.
Yes. If somebody on your team is hit by a bus, does the project end? That's the bus factor. So, it can also improve the amount of mentorship that occurs in a team and improve things like time estimates. As senior developers review the code of junior developers, they take on a mentorship role. It's good for junior developers, it's good for senior developers, it's good for everyone, right? Well, I almost got through it. Alright, I guess we'll call it there for today, folks. Thank you very much for putting up with me for today. See you next week.